Welcome Spartans to Halo Book Club, a part of Evolved, your home for Halo. Halo Book Club goes beyond the video games and covers Halo's extended media lore from the novels, short stories, comic books, and more.
It's time for Halo Book Club!
I'm your host Aaron, and with me today we've got Lucas.
Hello guys.
And we've got David.
Hello again, everybody.
We are back, we have a book club, we are doing things again.
Feels weird.
Yep, we are having to move the schedule about because this was supposed to be Rubicon Protocol, but it's not out yet, so instead you're getting another Fracture story and you're going to enjoy it.
Got another month.
We're covering Lessons Learned. That's going to be our short story for this month. But before we get started, we will do the socials. If you're new to the show, welcome. Halo Book Club is a part of Evolve that hosts a variety of other shows. We've got Mission Debrief, Podcast Evolve, Builds with Blocks, Halo TV Plus, Halo Gear Guide, and Halo Headlines. Evolved also partners with HCS Pro Talk, a podcast where Josh and Will discuss the latest information within the Halo competitive scene with an emphasis on the community every week. You can learn more about each show at Evolved's website, evolvedhalo.com. If you're already a fan, we'd like to ask you to please take a minute to go and leave us a review on your podcast service of choice. We do appreciate the reviews. We do see them. We do look at them. We love you all every time you give us a review. We would also like to take a minute to thank all of our patrons for their continued support. All the support you give us makes everything we do possible. So thank you very much, guys.
Yes, thank you guys so much.
If you're not already a patron and you're curious about it, you can go over to patreon.com/Halo Podcast Evolved and you can learn about all of the perks and benefits, including access to our soundtrack, access to the secret Discord channel, early access to episodes, and unique swag. And finally, we encourage all of our listeners to support us through Audible, where you can enjoy the growing collection of Halo novels all in one place, along with thousands of other novels, guided wellness programs, and more. Use the URL audibletrial.com/podcast evolve to learn more and start your free trial today. Recommendation on a book, because I usually try and do one every time we do Audible. I am currently on the Kingkiller Chronicle books, but there are only 2 of the 3 books released so far, so I didn't find that out till after I started, and now I'm a bit disappointed because I have to wait then for the 3rd book.
Man, waiting for books is terrible.
Yeah, but I did listen to this week's story as part of the audiobook as well, so that's very convenient when you're doing it for book club because you can just pick the chapter.
I'm currently listening to a book story called Wayward Galaxy. And so it is a Wayward Galaxy series, and I think I'm on book 4. And so, yeah, so I'm waiting on book 5. I'm about to finish that. That's always a good one. It's about Army Rangers jumping into the future and landing on an alien planet and fighting off, what are they? It's called the RUPAC, so it's like a Russian Asian Pacific Alliance and stuff like that. So it's a good book.
Oh, that sounds interesting. I do like a little bit of military sci-fi.
Yeah, it's everything I listen to for audiobooks now. So between that and Galaxy's Edge and Expeditionary Force, it's all military sci-fi stuff.
The next thing I want as audiobook form, which we don't currently have access to in the UK, is the original Gears novels. They do not have access to the audiobooks of those.
You do not? Oh, they are. The ones by Karen Travis, they are pretty good. I've gone through a few of them.
To be fair, I have read them all proper with my eyes, but I would like to listen to the audiobooks, but they're just not available.
That's unfortunate.
I may have to acquire them through less legitimate means, so hurry up Microsoft and I'll give you money if you want, but it's up to you guys. But anyway, enough about my piracy habits. We're instead going to talk about a book that I acquired entirely legitimately. Halo Fractures, specifically Lessons Learned. David's going to take us through all of the book details.
Little bit of info here, guys. So Halo Fractures is the story, obviously, and Lessons Learned is the story, from the book Halo Fractures. The author was Matt Forbeck, so he's done a bunch of stuff for us before, and we've seen him on the show. The publisher is Gallery Books. The formats are paper, digital, and audio, like we mentioned earlier. It was originally released in the 20th of September 2016, so quite a while ago now at this stage. It's a 1-hour audio and about 31 pages if you're a reading person. The brief summary is, Matt Forbeck gave a little summary, did he? Okay. It's his short story in Fractures is a action-packed scene from, but that's where it's interesting. Okay, I thought I'd seen this before. And then it brings us back to a familiar location and opens the door for all sorts of stories to take place there in the future. That's what Matt Forbeck said about his story. So Halo New Blood was his story, and he wrote another side story, this one. The timeline is the 29th of March, 2554. The location is Lacona Station. That actual location itself is classified. The characters are Tom, Lucy, Musa, who you may remember from old books. We don't hear about him anymore. I'm presuming we know what happened to him, which is actually a bummer if he was there. We have June, Franklin Mendez, that's right, Mendez is back. We have Kasha Heliot, who is a Sangheili female. We have Rudolph Skine, who is a traitor Spartan trainee. And we have Hideo Wakashia, the murder victim. If I remember, I had thought this was in a book, or this was a book itself.
Yeah, it actually is. This is like the alternate angle of this incident, because in New Blood, you see it from the point of view of Buck, and Buck is in the corridor with Romeo and the trainee captain, yes, or the training captain, and then the explosion happens, the decompression, she gets dragged down the corridor, Buck tries to save her, but she cracks her head on the wall and dies.
I remembered all that.
That's the part of the scene you see in the book, and then you get this angle, which is Tom and Lucy not knowing what happened, but then seeing June out adrift in space and being like, oh shit, we've got to do something. If you read this and went, this seems oddly familiar, that's because it actually is very familiar.
It is nice seeing it from a different angle and seeing freaking June fighting Rudolph, I can never say his name right, just in space fighting June, and then Tom and Lucy going out in space, and none of them have armor on. They are flesh and blood in the vacuum of space, and they survive.
It's mental. It's a great scene, actually. It's really cool.
I appreciate that the Halo universe does not subscribe to the Total Recall version of what happens in a vacuum.
Well, they even mentioned it. Tom makes a point. He's like, he exhales all of the air in his lungs before they decompress the room, and he jumps out. And he's like, oh, I got about a minute before I'm dead, or before I'm close to dying.
Yeah, which is pretty impressive. And he does say as well, I suppose we'll go through this from the start because we'll do the quick summary, otherwise we get all over the show a little bit. This picks off with Tom and Lucy. They're in the office. They're going over the training reports from the Spartan-IIIs. This is their job now. They're on Laconia Station. They train Spartan-IIIs. Suddenly, they feel a rumble through the station, realise there's been an explosion. Then the alarms go off. They get out into the corridor. As they make their way down the corridor, there's a sudden decompression. They're dragged down the corridor a bit. Lucy rescues Tom. Then the emergency bulkhead comes down. And they're talking to the station commander, I think Chu he's called, and they're asking him what's going on. He says, June and Musa were confronting the suspect in the homicide case, and they're like, what homicide? And then next minute, Lucy's like, oh shit, and looks out the window, and Tom floats up to the window to see June and Rudolph fighting in the vacuum of space, not in suits. And then June's last act is to basically kick Rudolph in the chest and send him flying on out into the void and launch himself back towards the space station. So Lucy opens the emergency airlock and climbs in, and Tom gets in with her, and she gives him the other end of the safety tether, and they decompress out and launch out. And Tom tries to guess June's direction on the fly and overshoots him because he doesn't realise that June's actually moving slower than he thinks. But they do manage to snag him. June lasts a pretty long time because at this stage June's been out there a while. He's been launched out, so he didn't really have much time to prepare. He fought with Skine until he kicked him away, and now he's drifting back to the space station and manages to grab the tether that Tom's attached to so that he doesn't drift past it.
I'd say it's not even a grab. He's losing consciousness and snags himself in the line. And so Tom's really concerned that he's going to come loose from the line before he gets to him.
Yeah, and June's lasted a brave while out here, which is pretty impressive. But then they sort of they get back into the airlock just as Tom passes out, and then they wake up in the medical bay. Tom's just come round, Lucy's in the next bay, Moose is there, and they basically have a conversation where he's like, after the actions today, we've basically decided you guys need to be back in the field and you're sort of wasted here. So we have an assignment for you.
And I'd say before they say that, when they tell them the assignment, Lucy and Tom have a conversation about fighting other humans and stuff like that. And Lucy kind of has the same mindset as Mickey to an extent, where she I signed up to fight the Covenant.
And it's kind of important because I think around the time, I know you'll get to in the end, Lucas, where you're talking about other things going on at the same time, but this is going on in the Halo universe, in a few other stories as well, about people realizing I signed up to fight aliens, not to fight humans, and we're all supposed to be in this. There's a very anti-alien feeling even after the breakup of the Covenant, and it's still very, very much present there with little characters like this, obviously soldiers that just have to flick a switch overnight and be no, we're best buds with arbiters. But that's obviously way harder than it looks to do. I like it. It's a good setup.
But it also shows that these Spartans don't have they're not all the same one mindset. They are individuals on their own. Where the Spartan-IIs, I feel, are very, with some exceptions, they are very conditioned to think one way. Whereas the Spartan-IIIs and 4s definitely have a little bit more variety in their opinions.
To even go back to the old novels, this opinion of I don't want to fight humans, it's an opinion even Chief has, because I think, is it in the Flood novel where Chief's fighting the Flood and the Covenant, or maybe it's in the Fall of Reach, but Chief has a moment where he stops and he thinks to himself, he goes, I'm never going to shoot another human again. It
might be when they're in the station in the Fall of Reach taking out the insurrectionist leader, and they blow essentially the station apart trying to get out, if I remember correctly.
I don't think it's then, because they still fight humans for another few years, but I think it's, off the top of my head, I want to say it's one of the scenes in the Flood that isn't in the game, when he's working his way through the ships or something. I think it's round then, it's late in the war. He just has this moment where he goes no, I'm never going to lift my weapon at another human ever again. You're if Master Chief thinks like that, of course other, Spartan 4s and Marines and stuff are going to have the same thought. There's a lot of people out there that signed up to put holes in the aliens, and that was it. I think it's an interesting part of the Halo universe to dive into, to be what do you do with all these people who you got them to sign up very easily to go and fight aliens to save humanity, and now you're going actually, we need you to go and shoot your neighbors now?
It's always a terrible thing to think about.
Yeah, there's a lot of sort of dark, slightly messed up stuff in Halo that I do wish they'd touch on more often. That's why I think I enjoy the Karen Travis novels so much, because they really dig into the heart of the issue about the Spartan 2 program and exactly how fucked up that is. They just go full into it. Especially with
certain someone's kidnapping. And
whereas when you do it in the, most people think about him and they go, oh, Master Chief, big green man, Master Chief kill aliens. And yeah, but Master Chief was also a kidnapped child who was experimented on. You're just... So I like when they do stuff like this. But anyway, before we get too far off track, I suppose we cover this story's kind of in two halves, because the second half then moves us. So we join up again with Tom and Lucy, and they've just gotten off their transport on their new home in Onyx, or Trevelyan. They're now going to be part of the security team on the research lab, or the facility. They get there, someone calls out to them, they're like, oh, who's that? And then suddenly realize, oh fuck, that's Mendez. So Lucy gives him a hug, Tom gives him a hug, they start talking, then they suddenly realize Mendez isn't just there for the sightseeing. And then he tells him, no, you work for me now, I run this operation. So he's responsible for basically all the civilian security. And then the Oni stuff has a separate person for it. And then they're introduced to our second sort of almost lead character in Legacy of Onyx, which is Kasha Hylot. So she's the leader of the elites on Onyx, or is it Onyx or Trevelyan? What do we call? What is the planet called, and what's the city?
Onyx is just Tom and Lucy, they have trouble calling it Trevelyan. They refer to it as Onyx because that is what they called it when they were helping Kurt train all those Spartan-IIIs.
So Kasha and Lucy have like a bit of a stare down for a minute, and things are very tense. And then Mendez is like, all right, Tom, you go with Kasha, get our bags, or Cass and get our bags, and Lucy, you come with me for a walk while we go find the warthog. He's like, did you forget where you parked it? And he's like, no, but I think you need a minute. And it's just like, get away from the elite lady before you two start fighting. And then there's an argument. There is a bit of a falling out between one Marine in particular and Kasha, and it devolves into a fight. Tom steps in to defend her. Just as things are about to get really serious, Mendez reappears and does the old shot in the air to calm everyone down, and then basically tells the Marines, right, off the fuck you go, back to your ship.
Yeah, you're never coming back, sort of a thing. And he makes a point. He makes a point to say, hey, from now on, we're gonna make sure anybody that comes here is okay with, being around, or at least they're professional enough to stow their feelings about Covenant and all the other species that are involved.
Yeah, and then that's pretty much where it finishes. I don't think there's much more after that. We have like the little moment at the end where Cash is basically like, thanks very much, I could have stepped in and defended myself, but this is a lesson that is better taught to a human by a human than by me. And that's sort of where we leave it. And this, like we said, sets up Legacy of Onyx, where by the time we get to Legacy of Onyx in the novels, Tom and Lucy have been on the planet for a while.
Yeah, it's been a few years, because it's right when the events of Halo 5 happened, and so that's like 4 or 5 years from when this happens.
Yeah, so they're like well established at this stage, so this is just the very beginning of all that. But as a short story goes, I enjoy it. Like, I like a story that ties two novels together.
Yeah, especially when it's pulling over these characters, and it is an interesting concept of like facing what was your enemy who is now your friend, and what that actually looks like on the ground.
And like this story takes place like only a year after the end of the Covenant War. Like, with Legacy of Onyx, the war's been over for 5-6 years at this point, or even at the end of Halo 5, but like, at this point, it's still really fresh and raw for most people in their minds. So these are just things that they're going to have to learn to deal with. That's pretty much it. Do we want to go through some trivia?
We have some trivia. So I pulled one bit off Halopedia. It wasn't until after I'd listened to the story and I was about to do the notes and I went like, hang on a minute, did they get that wrong? And they did. So in the story, they identify June as being one of the Beta Company Spartans, but June is actually one of the original Alpha Company. He is June A266, not B, whereas Tom and Lucy are both B292 and B091. So he's actually an Alpha Company Spartan and is older than Tom and Lucy. They're not all peers, even though they're all Spartan-III. So that was just something that they got wrong in that little story there. And I think you've got some stuff.
Yes, I just kind of pulled up some of the events that kind of happened before this story comes along. So we'll start off. I had January 2553 is when Sarah Palmer gets approached by June to be a Spartan 4. The Kilo 5 trilogy, so is between January and May of 2553. Last Light is July of 2553. A Necessary Truth, and that's another Fracture story with the ferrets, is in October 2553. Then it goes to Halo Retribution, which is another ferret story, is December 2553. And then Rookie's Death is January 2554. So this is the start of New Blood. And then Buck becomes a Spartan, starts his Spartan training right before the beginning of this, and actually Veronica Dare actually mentions that there is a mole in the Spartan 4 program, and again, like we discussed earlier, it shows just another perspective of that whole events going on. So just a lot of things kind of happened between January and like the end of this book, between all the Spartan-IIIs, the events of the Kilo 5 trilogy with Buck and Veronica, and then the Rookie's Death, and there's a lot that kind of they pull from and just place little Easter eggs in this story.
It's a very well serviced chunk of the timeline at the minute. They just had a lot of activity going on here. It's been good to fill it all out. Thoughts overall? Did you enjoy this story? Did you not?
It's a nice little story. I had no problems with it. It's one of the short stories. It definitely does a good job at tying in a bunch of other points in the story. And we actually didn't speak about Captain O'Hare. Is that her name? That, she's a big part in the New Blood story as well. And she gets brought up. There's another character that's brought up as well that in the story that she died.
Oh, Captain O'Day.
Oh, O'Day. My bad, not O'Dare.
I think overall, it's a good... I appreciate a short, tight story. There's no wasted time. There's no mucking about. There's no filler in it. It's just straight to the point. It has a nice little action scene and then a little lesson to learn at the end.
Mirror pretty much what you guys said. I like the purpose of it, of tying the two books together and fleshing out some of the tensions between everybody and the different kind of factions and stuff, and kind of reintroducing us to Onyx at the same time, because we hadn't been there for a good while. What book was that one where Kurt and them are legging it out?
That is there's Ghosts of Onyx, and then you get back to Onyx and Glasslands, and then we get Legacy of Onyx. So that's sort of the few that tie it all together.
No, it's good. I really like it. I like that location. I like the setup. I want to see something more kind of come out of that. So, but no, it's pretty good. It's well done. Nice and sweet.
And I do like getting a bit more Tom and Lucy as a pair. It's always nice to have these established little teams of Spartans that you get more information about. I would appreciate another novel and another Tom and Lucy adventure as they fight their way through the Shield world.
Yeah, they're still here, aren't they? Their current whereabouts are still on Onyx.
They're in a slip space bubble.
Yeah, it's back in the slip space bubble to avoid the Guardians, and they're basically stuck there now. That's where we're left with that. They're on Trevelyan and stuck there. In theory, the portals that are there would have been able to take them to other places, but the portal networks are all a bit fecked, so they can't go anywhere. So they're just stuck now. Right, well, I think that'll do us then. There's not really much more to say. Like we said, the short stories are just sort of like that. Alright, well guys, look, thank you for joining us. Like we mentioned at the top of every show, you can find every episode of all of our stuff over on the website, evolvedhalo.com. It also features links to our Discord, Facebook group, Patreon page, the Xbox Live Club, and our other contact info. Once again, special shout out to all of our patrons for supporting the show and helping make everything we do possible. Head to patreon.com/Halo Evolved to learn more. And finally, if you would like to leave us a voicemail about this episode or any other episodes, you can give us a call at 205-EVOLVED. That's 205-386-5833. And just a reminder, our next book club then should be Rubicon Protocol. That comes out next month. So we will keep you updated if there's any more delays. Otherwise, grab yourself a copy and get reading for the next show. And with that, I have been your host, Aaron. And until next time, evolved.
Evolved.
Evolve.